Today we're diving deep into some of the first stories humanity ever bothered to write down. We're talking about Mesopotamian mythology. It's this incredible world filled with epic heroes, terrifying monsters, and gods who were, frankly, a real piece of work. But it's also a world that feels unfinished, kind of like you found an amazing book, but the last few chapters have been ripped out. And that's the big question, isn't it? You can probably name a few Greek gods, maybe some Norse or Egyptian ones, but the myths that came before all of them, the ones that laid the groundwork, for most of us, they're like a whisper, a ghost. So why is that? Why is the world's first great mythology so hard to see clearly? And hey, this isn't just some dusty academic question. People who love mythology feel this so deeply. A user on Reddit put it perfectly. They said it drives them crazy knowing how much is still out there undiscovered. It's this feeling that there's a whole library buried just under the sand that makes this all so fascinating. And yeah, a little bit maddening. So, to figure out why so much is missing, we first have to get a handle on the world we can see. Let's set the stage and take a look at the people who cooked up these incredible stories in the first place. We're talking about a huge stretch of time, literally thousands of years, in the area we now call Iraq. And this wasn't just one empire. It was a whole series of amazing cultures. The Sumerians, Akkadians, Babylonians, and Assyrians. Each one built on the beliefs of the people who came before, writing their stories on clay tablets and creating, really, the first library of the human imagination. And wow, what a library it was. It was filled with some absolutely unforgettable characters. So let's meet some of the divine A-listers of ancient Mesopotamia. Okay, so right at the top of the cosmic food chain, you had the big four. There was Anu, the Sky Father, kind of the distant CEO of the whole operation. Then you had Enlil, the god of storms, who was the enforcer. He carried out the god's plans, and he did not mess around. Then there's Enki, the god of wisdom and water. He was the clever one, the trickster, who often had a soft spot for us humans. And then there was Inanna, later known as Ishtar, who was just a force of nature. And this is where it gets really interesting. These gods weren't simple. Take Inanna. On one hand, she's the goddess of love and fertility. But on the other, she's a ruthless goddess of war, driven by ambition. This duality is everything. Mesopotamian gods weren't just good or evil. They were powerful, complicated forces, embodying both creation and total destruction. And then you get these incredible creatures, like the lamassu. Part human, part bull, part eagle. But these weren't monsters you'd send a hero to slay. No way. They were guardians. I mean, can you imagine walking up to a palace gate and seeing two of these colossal statues just staring down at you? The message was crystal clear. This place is under divine protection. So, we've met the cost. Now let's go to the stories themselves and see how these gods and monsters dealt with humanity. And these epics, they're not just adventure stories. They're humanity's first attempt to grapple with the biggest questions of all: life, death, and what our place is in this crazy cosmos. The most famous one, of course, is the Epic of Gilgamesh, pretty much the world's first literary masterpiece. It's about this tyrant king who, through friendship and devastating loss, is forced to confront his own mortality. He goes on this epic quest to try and live forever, and he fails. But he comes home a different man, one who has accepted what it means to be human. It's just a profound story. And if you want to know why Gilgamesh was so terrified of death, well, this is it. This is his best friend's vision of the afterlife. It's this bleak, gray, dusty place where everyone, kings, servants, everyone, ends up as a shadow of their former self. There's no heaven, no glorious reward, and that idea makes life on Earth infinitely more precious, right? And the influence of these epics is just staggering. Just look at this breakdown of the Great Flood story from Gilgamesh next to the story of Noah from the Bible. A divine warning, a huge boat, saving animals, landing on a mountain. The parallels are just undeniable. The motivations are a little different, though. The Mesopotamian gods were basically just annoyed because humans were being too loud, while the God of the Bible was disappointed in our wickedness. It just goes to show how these stories became the blueprint for so much that came after. So we have these incredibly rich, influential, powerful stories, which brings us right back to where we started. If this mythology is so important, why does it feel like a ghost? Well, it's time to solve the mystery. Look, the answer isn't some big conspiracy. It really boils down to three kind of practical problems. First, the source material itself. These stories were written on clay tablets, and over thousands of years, they break. Most of what we have are just fragments. Second, the language. Cuneiform is an incredibly difficult script to read, and there are only a handful of experts in the world who can do it well. And third, even when tablets are found, they often get stuck in academic limbo, unpublished, untranslated, or hidden behind an expensive paywall. And the scale of this problem is just huge. We're not talking about a few dozen texts. There are literally tens of thousands of cuneiform tablets sitting in museum collections around the world just waiting for someone to translate them. Each one could hold a missing piece of the puzzle. And you gotta put this in perspective. We've pretty much always been able to read ancient Greek and Latin, but the key to unlocking all of this Mesopotamian literature, that only happened in the 1800s. We've had a massive head start on other mythologies. When it comes to this stuff, we're still kind of the new kids on the block. But here's the most amazing part to me. Even though these stories have been shattered and lost and misunderstood for millennia, their power was so immense that they still managed to shape our world in ways we barely even notice. Just look at some of these ideas. Creation kicking off with a battle against a chaos monster, that started here. A massive flood that wipes the slate clean, that started here. A grim, shadowy underworld for everybody, the hero's journey to find meaning, even the idea that humans were created just to be servants for the gods. All of these massive, foundational ideas echoed through so many other cultures and are still with us in the books and movies we love today. And that brings us to this final, really thrilling idea. Another Reddit user, Sargantus, absolutely nailed it. They said that Mesopotamian mythology is still actively expanding. Think about that. Unlike Greek myths, which are pretty much set in stone, this story is still growing. Every time a new tablet fragment gets translated, our understanding gets a little bigger. So that ghost story we started with, well, it's slowly getting its body back, piece by agonizing piece. This isn't just an ancient dead epic. It's a live story that we're still uncovering. And it just leaves you with this incredible, tantalizing question. What other stories are still down there, buried in the dust, just waiting to completely change everything we think we know?